You ever look around at your job, at the government, just at the world, and think to yourself, how is everyone so bad at their job? Well, turns out you're not alone. Today we're diving into this powerful, really witty, and frankly scarily relevant theory from way back in 1969 that explains this exact feeling. It's called the Peter Principle, and it might just change how you see everything. So, first, let's just sit with that feeling for a second. That sense that incompetence is just everywhere. It's like this constant, annoying background noise in our lives. And it's not just a hunch. It's something you can see all around you.
I mean, think about it. We've gotten to the point where we expect things to fail. You buy a brand new car and you're kind of just waiting for the recall notice. You get a new fridge and you're not even surprised when it dies a week later. It really feels like we're living in a world held together with tape and a prayer.
And it's not just the little things, not by a long shot. The book that this whole theory comes from, the Peter Principle, it kicks off with these huge, mind-boggling failures. We're talking about a highway bridge just collapsing, giant cooling towers that got knocked over by a strong breeze, a fancy new indoor stadium where the skylights made it impossible for the players to see the ball, and my favorite, building an entire city on land everyone knew was a floodplain. I mean, you couldn't make this up if you tried. And this pattern goes way beyond just engineering or construction. It's everywhere. We barely even blank anymore when we hear about the lawyer who can't form a coherent sentence, or the famous author who, can't actually write. It's so common, it's basically a running joke.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Why? Why does it seem like incompetence always wins? You hear all sorts of explanations. People blame the schools, the politicians, you name it. But what if it wasn't that complicated? What if there was one single, simple rule that explains the whole mess?
Well, back in 1969, a guy named Dr. Laurence J. Peter came up with that very thing. He proposed this unifying theory, and he even created a whole new field of study he playfully called hierarchiology, which is just a fancy way of saying the study of how organizations are structured and, more importantly, why they so often fail.
And this right here is the heart of it all, the Peter Principle. Just read it and let it sink in for a second. In a hierarchy, every employee tends to rise to his level of incompetence. It's so simple, it's almost elegant. But man, the implications are absolutely massive.
So, let's break down how this actually works. Imagine you run a factory. You hire a bunch of people to roll pills. Most are just okay, but one guy, Mr. Spherehead, he's a genius at it. So when a foreman position opens up, who do you pick? Of course, you promote your best pill roller, Mr. Sphere. But here's the trap. Being a great pill roller has nothing to do with being a great manager. Now, if he's a good foreman, fantastic. He's on track for another promotion. But what if he's a terrible foreman? Well, you don't fire him, you don't demote him, he just stays there, forever, stuck as an incompetent foreman. He has officially reached his level of incompetence. And this isn't just some funny little story about a factory. The book is absolutely stuffed with real-life examples showing this exact process happening over and over in every industry you can think of. It's like a predictable ladder that leads directly to failure. Just look at these cases. You've got J.S. Minion, a super agreeable guy, great maintenance foreman. He gets promoted to superintendent, and suddenly his agreeableness means he can't make the tough calls. Or E. Tinker, a perfectionist mechanic, amazing at his job. But as a foreman, his perfectionism creates bottlenecks and missed deadlines. General Goodwin was a brilliant, gutsy general on the battlefield. But as a field marshal, he was a disaster because he couldn't handle all the high-level politics and diplomacy. You see the pattern? The very thing that made them great in one job caused them to fail in the next.
The book has this quote that just nails it perfectly. In every hierarchy, the cream rises until it sours. You do good work, you get rewarded with a promotion that pulls you away from that work, and this cycle repeats until you finally land in a role you just can't handle.
But here's where things get really serious. This isn't just about how a company runs, it's about people. Reaching your level of incompetence, what the book calls your final placement, has a huge personal cost. And this is where the theory becomes critical for our own lives, because it directly impacts our health and our happiness.
In fact, the author makes this incredibly bold claim right at the beginning of the book. He says that understanding this principle can literally help you avoid painful illnesses. Think about that. The idea is that being stuck in a job you're bad at day in and day out doesn't just feel awful, it can physically make you sick. And the book breaks down two very different kinds of workplace stress. On the one side, you have what's called pseudo-achievement syndrome. This is the stress that hits high performers, people who are still good at their jobs and are still climbing. Sure, they might get ulcers or insomnia, but it's the stress that comes from doing things.
But on the other side, you have the final placement syndrome. This is totally different. This is the stress of people who've hit their limit. It's the anxiety of being in over your head, of knowing you're failing, of just stagnating. And the dividing line is a simple question. Is this person actually getting useful work done? If the answer is yes, that's the stress of success. If the answer is no, that's the sickness of failure.
So this all leads to a pretty scary thought, doesn't it? If everybody eventually gets promoted to a job they're bad at, how does anything get done? I mean, how is our society not in a state of total collapse?
And the theory just doubles down on this with what's called Peter's corollary. In time, every post tends to be occupied by an employee who is incompetent to carry out its duties. If you follow the logic all the way, it means that eventually every single job will be filled by someone who can't do it. So really, how is anything working at all?
So what's the answer? Do you just opt out, go live in a field, and avoid the whole system? Because for most of us, that's not exactly a realistic option. If we're all caught in this system, climbing towards our own inevitable incompetence, who is actually keeping the lights on?
And the answer is as simple and as profound as the principle itself. All the real, useful work in the world, it's being done by the people who haven't gotten promoted to a job they're bad at yet. Society is literally running on the steam of everyone who is still on their way up the ladder.
And that leaves us with one last question. A question you kind of have to ask yourself. Every time you get a promotion, every time you succeed and move up, you are taking one step closer to your own personal ceiling. So, given enough time and enough rungs on the ladder, where will you end up?